We have already looked at theories of development, and now we will study the important development periods for a human being. Although growth and development are dramatic during the first 2 decades of life, development is not something that happens only to children and adolescents. The traditional approach to the study of development emphasizes change from birth to adolescence and little or no change in adulthood and old age. But a great deal of change does happen in the 5 or 6 decades after adolescence. The lifespan approach emphasizes developmental change throughout adulthood as well as childhood. The interplay of biological, cognitive, and socio-emotional processes produces the periods of human lifespan. A developmental period refers to a time frame in a person's life that is characterized by certain features. Describing development in terms of these periods helps us to understand development better. The most widely used classification of developmental periods involves the 8-period sequence. The prenatal period is the time from conception to birth. Infancy is the developmental period from birth to 18 or 24 months. Early childhood is the developmental period from the end of infancy to age 5 or 6. Middle and late childhood is the developmental period from about 6 to 11 years of age. Adolescence is the developmental period of transition from childhood to early adulthood, approximately 10 to 12 years of age and ending at 18 to 21 years of age. Early adulthood is the developmental period that begins in the late teens or early 20s and lasts through the 30s. Middle adulthood is the developmental period from approximately 40 years of age to about 60. Late adulthood is the developmental period that begins in the 60s or 70s and lasts until death. Physical development. Prenatal stage involves tremendous growth from a single cell to an organism complete with brain and behavioral capabilities and takes place in approximately a 9-month period. In early childhood period, parents eagerly await to see when the child learns how to roll over and crawl. Each of these represents a part of physical development. The process happens in an orderly manner, that is, certain skills and abilities generally occur before others. For example, most infants learn to crawl before they learn to walk. It is also important to realize that the rate at which these physical goals are reached can vary from child to child. During middle childhood, children grow in height and weight. In adolescence, children attain puberty. When children hit puberty, their bodies produce certain hormones which cause physical changes. Some of these changes include an increase in height and weight, growth, and changes in sexual organs, sometimes pimples. These physical changes are caused by hormones produced by the body such as estrogen and testosterone. However, because of the different levels of testosterone and estrogen found in the two genders, boys more testosterone and girls with more estrogen, boys and girls undergo different physical changes. During adulthood, there are few changes in height. There may be changes in weight as people put on or lose weight. Some men may experience middle age spread as their waistline expands. Some women's weight may fluctuate as a response to pregnancy or hormone changes associated with post-pregnancy or menopause factors. Growth in later adulthood is usually negative growth. Cognitive development. Much of our knowledge about cognitive development has been influenced by the work of Piaget. Piaget's theory is based on stages, where each stage builds upon the last. Infants are in the sensory motor stage. Inborn reflexes include rooting, turning their heads towards something that touches their cheek. Sucking, the tendency to suck at things that touch their lips. Then there is stepping, the movement of legs when they are held with their feet touching the floor. The first few times an infant sucks food from a bottle, grasps an object or crawls, they really have to think about it. But through repetition, these skills become increasingly subconscious. We know that repetition creates lasting memories and babies love repetition. Cognitive abilities associated with memory, reasoning, problem solving, and thinking continue to emerge throughout childhood. Jean Piaget, stages of cognitive development. Sensory motor stage. It's a period of time between birth and age 2, during which an infant's knowledge of the world is limited to his or her sensory perceptions and motor activities. Behaviors are limited to simple motor responses caused by sensory stimuli. The pre-operational stage, it's a period between ages 2 and 6, during which a child learns to use language. During this stage, children do not yet understand concrete logic, cannot mentally manipulate information, and are unable to take the point of view of other people. Concrete operational stage. It's a period between ages 7 and 11, during which children gain a better understanding of mental operations. Children begin thinking logically about concrete events but have difficulty understanding abstract or hypothetical concepts. Formal operational stage. This is a period between ages 12 to adulthood when people develop the ability to think about abstract concepts. Skills such as logical thought, deductive reasoning, and systematic planning also emerge during this stage. During adolescence, that is between 12 and 18 years of age, the developing teenager acquires the ability to think systematically about all logical relationships within a problem. The transition from concrete thinking to formal logical operations occur over time. Each adolescent progresses at varying rates in developing his or her ability to think in more complex ways. When emotional issues arise, they often interfere with an adolescent's ability to think in more complex ways. The Seattle longitudinal study has provided detailed insights into the development of several intellectual functions across adulthood and middle age. The data suggests that for inductive reasoning, vocabulary, verbal memory, and spatial orientation, the average performance peaks occur in the ages from early 40s to 60s. 5 primary mental abilities are verbal meaning, spatial orientation, inductive reasoning, number ability, and word fluency. Although thinking processes become slower and less sharp once a person reaches late adulthood, there is individual variation in these declines. Personality development. An individual's personality is a result of the decisions they have made throughout their life and the memory of the experiences to which these decisions led. There are inherent natural, genetic, and environmental factors that contribute to the development of our personality. According to the process of socialization, personality also colors our values, beliefs, and expectations. Hereditary factors that contribute to personality development do so as a result of interactions with a particular social environment in which people live. A person's characteristic ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving across particular environmental circumstances or one's personality defines how others view him or her and dictates the qualities they speak of when discussing the person with others. Children do not have a specific personality during infancy. From childhood to adolescence, our personality is shaped by our parents and society until we are able to independently support ourselves later as a young adult. However, this does not mean that every child develops healthy psychological functioning to allow them to become independent adults. The success of this psychological development consists of a complex interaction of heredity and environment during particular stages throughout childhood, which lay the foundation for effective or ineffective development. For example, a child born into a dysfunctional family with sexual, verbal, and physical abuse is not likely to have a solid foundation for the type of thinking needed to develop healthy psychological functioning. Therefore, with regard to personality, we see that childhood and adolescent influences are a major influence on personality throughout our life. In fact, the personality acquired through childhood and adolescence remains as a constant personality of the person, and any change that is produced after this is very slow and takes many years to come into effect. The personality acquired during adolescence is quite sudden, but the personality acquired during adulthood is a slow and stabilizing process. Any difficulties encountered during childhood and adolescence often lead to formation of difficult personalities for the rest of their life. Overall, we see that personality shows sudden change during adolescence but pretty much stays stable during the rest of the significant development periods of a human lifespan. Social development. So, what is social development? It refers to the way in which individuals' interactions with others and their social relationships grow, change, and remain stable over the course of life. Social development in infants of 2 years. Toddlers begin to respond to others' emotions and can show love by giving hugs and kisses. Social development in early childhood. Play serves an important role for children, both in their own skill development and also in relation to others. Associative play, where children interact and share but do not actually seem to be playing the same game, characterizes 4 years old. By the age of 5, children engage in more cooperative play, take turns, and create games. Children at this age prefer same gender playmates in other cultures. Boys tend to be more involved in rough and tumble play and are more aggressive. Girls are more inclined to engage in nurturing activities and are more cooperative. Let's see something about social development in adolescence. They learn to tolerate individual differences as they come in contact with people who have different values and lifestyles. They prepare themselves for adult interactions as they begin to form more intimate relationships. Sexual experimentation generally increases during this period. They become less dependent on parents, gradually achieving a psychological sense of autonomy. For many young adults, choosing a lifelong partner is a major task at this stage of development. The worker in adulthood. In the early career stage, the worker questions his competence and degree of commitment. As the role of a worker evolves, challenges emerge, dealing with the demands and expectations of the job and negotiating the hierarchy of authority. Anxiety coupled with the worry about being financially self-sufficient. The partner in early childhood. Likely that committing to an intimate relationship that may involve marriage may not occur until early adulthood, depending on culture. Compromise and flexibility are crucial as couples come to agreement about such issues as spending and saving money, work schedules and habits, relationships with friends and in-laws, alone time versus couple time, eating and sleeping patterns, and other daily living matters. What about the parent in adulthood? Having children led to greater marital satisfaction for couples who already were satisfied with their relationship. Couples who had significant conflict prior to becoming parents had increased difficulty after the birth of the baby. Middle adulthood. Most people make the transition to midlife with little difficulty. Aging is different for every individual and varies according to culture, but there are general trends that occur at some point during this developmental stage. Individual differences. Now, students, we have studied the changes during significant developmental periods in the human lifespan under the headings of physical, cognitive, personality, and social changes. It is important to keep in mind that these broad periods, which are largely accepted by lifespan developmentalists, are social constructions. A social construction is a shared notion of reality, one that is widely accepted but is a function of society and culture at a given time. Therefore, the age ranges within a period and even the periods themselves are in many ways random and often culturally derived. For example, the concept of childhood as a special period did not even exist during the 17th century. At that time, children were seen simply as mini adults. While some periods have a clear cut boundary, others, developmental periods, do not have a clear cut boundary. For example, consider the period of young adulthood, which in Western cultures is typically assumed to begin at the age of 20. That age, however, is noted only because it marks the end of teenage period. In fact, for many people, such as those enrolled in higher education, the age changes from 19 to 20 has little special significance, coming as it does in the middle of the college years. For them, more major changes may occur when they leave college and enter the workforce, which is more likely to happen around the age of 22. Furthermore, in some non-Western cultures, adulthood may be considered to start much earlier when children whose educational opportunities are limited begin full-time work. In short, there are substantial individual differences in the timing of events in people's lives. In part, this is a biological fact of life. People mature at different rates and reach developmental milestones at different points. However, environmental factors also play a significant role in determining the age at which a particular event is likely to occur. Example, the typical age of marriage varies substantially from one culture to another, depending on part in the functions that marriage plays in a given culture. Therefore, students, it is important to keep in mind that when developmental specialists discuss age ranges, they are talking about averages, the times when people on an average reach particular stage of development. Some people will reach the goal earlier, some later, and many will reach it around the time of the average. Such variation becomes noteworthy only when children show substantial deviation from the average. For example, parents whose child begins to speak at a much later age than average might decide to have their son or daughter tested by a speech therapist. Each of the broad topical areas of lifespan development, physical, cognitive, social, and personality development, plays a role throughout the lifespan. Consequently, some developmental experts focus on physical development during the prenatal period and others during adolescence. Let us summarize. How can we clearly describe the differences in capacities between infants, children, adolescents, and adults? One view holds that infants and preschoolers respond to the world in much the same way as adults do. The difference between the immature and mature being is simply one of complexity. Let's see an example. When Sita was a baby, her perception of a Veena melody, memory for past events, and ability to sort objects into categories may have been much like our own. Maybe her only limitation was that she could not perform these skills with as much information and precision as we can. If this is so, then change in her thinking must be a continuous process of gradually augmenting the same types of skills that were there to begin with. According to a second view, infants and children have unique ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving, once quite different from adults. If so, then development is a discontinuous process in which new and different ways of understanding and responding to the world emerge at specific times. Theories that accept the discontinuous perspective regard development as taking place in stages, qualitative changes in thinking, feeling, and behaving that characterize specific periods of development. In stage theories, development is like climbing a staircase, with each step corresponding to a more mature, reorganized way of functioning. The stage concept assumes that people undergo periods of rapid transformation as they step up from one stage to the next. In other words, change is fairly sudden rather than gradual and ongoing. Students, as educators, you will have to answer and research this question for yourself based on your experience and current and future research. In this topic, we have studied significant development periods in the human lifespan. But the larger question also remains. Does development actually take place in a neat, orderly sequence of stages? In fact, this ambitious assumption has faced significant challenges.